The water was black and angry. Waves crashed against sharp rocks, and the wind howled like it was warning anyone who dared to try. In the distance, lights from the city of San Francisco blinked softly, close enough to see, but impossibly far to reach. 3 men slipped into the freezing water. No guard saw them. No alarms rang. Inside their cells, fake heads made from soap and paper still rested on pillows, fooling everyone. This was Alcatraz, the prison nobody ever escaped. Or did they? The men kicked into the dark water, holding onto a small raft made from raincoats. The current pulled hard. The cold stabbed like knives. Then they vanished. To this day, no one knows what happened next. That is the mystery. Years before that night, Alcatraz stood like a monster in the middle of the bay. People called it the Rock. It was surrounded by freezing water, strong currents, and sharks that everyone feared, even if they were rarely seen. The prison was built to break hope. My name is James Carter. I was a guard at Alcatraz in the early 1960s. I worked night shifts, long, quiet hours. Too quiet. Alcatraz was not loud like other prisons. It was silent. That silence was heavy. Inmates lived in small cells. No privacy. No escape. Just steel bars, cold air, and rules. Some inmates cried at night. Some yelled. Some went quiet forever. That was the low part. Slow and crushing. The men who came to Alcatraz were sent there for one reason. They were trouble. If you caused problems in other prisons, you came to Alcatraz. If you tried to escape somewhere else, you came to Alcatraz. And once you arrived, guards told you the same thing. Only 2 ways out, your sentence or the water. Most believed it. One inmate did not. His name was Frank Morris. Frank was quiet, smarter than most. He read books and asked questions. Too many questions. He watched routines. He counted steps. He listened. That made me uneasy. Frank shared a cell near John Anglin and Clarence Anglin, 2 brothers who were calm and careful. They followed rules just enough to avoid attention. But at night, when lights went out, I heard whispering. That was a high moment for suspicion. Something was happening. Alcatraz was old. The walls were weak in places because of salt air. Behind the sinks in some cells, the concrete was crumbling. Frank noticed that. With nothing but a spoon, he started digging. Slowly, quietly, night after night. The hole grew. That was the lowest moment for security, and we didn't even know it. Months passed. Nothing seemed wrong. Count was always correct. Cells looked normal. Inmates followed rules. Too perfect. That should have been the warning. The night of the escape came quietly. I was on duty. The wind was strong. The water was rough. No one in their right mind would swim that night. That's why no one suspected anything. When we did count, everything looked fine. 3 men in their beds. Or so we thought. By morning, the truth hit us like ice water. Cells were empty. The holes were open. The raft was gone. And the men were nowhere. The prison went wild. Searches. Boats. Helicopters. Nothing. No bodies. No proof. No answers. That was the highest peak. The moment the impossible might have happened. And as I stare out at the water, one thought would not leave my mind. What if they made it? The prison woke up in panic. Whistles blew. Boots ran across metal floors. Doors slammed open and shut again. Guards shouted names into radios that crackled with fear. 3 cells were empty, not moved, not transferred, gone. I stood on the tier staring at the holes behind the sinks. The concrete was soft, eaten away by years of salt air. The holes led to a dark service tunnel we rarely checked. That was our mistake. That was everyone's mistake. Search boats rushed into the water before the sun was fully up. Helicopters cut across the sky, scanning the waves. Guards searched every inch of the island. Nothing. No men. No raft. No signs of a body. Some guards said they drowned. Others said nothing. I couldn't stop thinking about the fake heads. Soap, paper, paint, hair stolen from the barber shop. That wasn't luck. That was planning. That was intelligence. Days passed. The official story was simple. They drowned in the bay. The water was cold. The currents were strong. Survival was impossible. That was the low part. Easy answers. Closed minds. But there were problems with that story. No bodies washed up. No clothing was found. No raft pieces showed up where they should have. The bay gives things back. It always does. But this time it gave nothing. Investigators came. They measured tides. They checked weather reports. They followed currents on maps. Some of them looked worried. One man told me quietly, if they left at the right time, they might have reached shore. That sentence hit me hard. Might have. Inside the prison, things changed. Inmates stopped whispering. They smiled. Not big smiles. Small ones. Quiet ones. Hope had entered the building. That scared the prison more than anger ever did. We searched cells again and again. We took spoons away. We checked walls. We watched harder. But it was too late. The idea had escaped. Weeks later, a strange thing happened. A family member of one of the brothers received a Christmas card. No return address. Just a message inside. I'm doing fine. Officials said it was a lie. A trick. But they couldn't prove it. That was a high moment. Dangerous. Because now the question wasn't just did they escape? It was, are they alive? Years went by. The prison eventually closed. The island became quiet again, but the story didn't die. People argued. Some said the men drowned for sure. Some said they made it to shore and disappeared. Evidence pointed both ways. No proof. Only questions. One night, long after I left the job, I stood by the water and looked out at the island. The wind sounded the same. The waves moved the same. And I realized something. Alcatraz was built to crush hope, but hope found a crack, and it slipped through. Then something happened that reopened the case. A letter arrived, written years later, claiming the escape worked, claiming one of them survived, claiming the impossible was real. And that meant one thing. The story was not over. The letter was thin and yellow with age. It arrived quietly, like it didn't want attention. Inside was a short message written in careful handwriting. My name is Frank Morris. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962. I am 83 years old and in bad health. If you announce on TV that I will only get 1 year in prison and medical care, I will come forward and tell the truth. When investigators read it, the room went silent. For decades, the case had been closed. They drowned, the report said, but now the door was open again. Experts studied the letter. They tested the paper. They studied the handwriting. They checked old prison records. Nothing proved it was fake. Nothing proved it was real. That was the lowest part of the mystery. Always standing in the middle, more clues came out. A raft fragment had been found years earlier on a nearby island. A wallet believed to belong to one of the brothers had been discovered close to shore. Family members said the brothers sent gifts from South America for years. Officials said these clues were weak. But weak clues still matter when there are so many of them. Scientists ran tests using computers. They recreated the night of the escape, the wind, the tides, the water temperature. The results surprised everyone. If the men entered the water at the exact time they did, they could have survived. That was the highest peak of hope, the moment when impossible turned into maybe. The FBI reopened the case. They searched records in Brazil. They reviewed photos. They interviewed family members again. One photograph showed two men standing together in another country years after the escape. They looked older, but familiar. No one could prove it was them. No one could prove it wasn't. Alcatraz stayed silent. Tourists walked through the cells now. They stood in front of the holes behind the sinks. They looked at the beds with fake heads on display. Some laughed. Some stared. Some whispered, "What if they made it?" That question never left. I was old by then, retired. But when reporters asked me what I believed, I told them the truth. "I don't know," I said, "but I know this. Those men were smart, patient, and careful. And they planned everything." I paused. And nobody ever found their bodies. The official case was closed again years later. Not because the men were proven dead, but because there was nothing left to chase. No final answer. just a mystery frozen in time. Inside Alcatraz, the prison nobody ever escaped, 3 men walked out into the night. Whether they died in the water or lived free somewhere else, one thing is certain. They beat the system. They cracked the rock. And they left behind the greatest prison mystery in American history. That is the story. And the question still remains. Did they escape? Or did Alcatraz claim them in the end?